This is one of the first poems I ever memorized, and I think it's a good habit to start to memorize poems that you like. I remember being on a plane once, and for whatever reason, we weren't allowed to use our phones or laptops or anything. I don't know what was going on, but they told us we couldn't use it. So, I had a pen and paper. After I'd written a while, all I had to do was go into my mind, and I had a store of maybe 25 or 30 poems I'd memorized, and I was just kind of reciting them to myself. I know it sounds a little bit corny to some people, but rote memorization is something that, really gets a poem in your bones. And this poem means to me, at a certain point in my life, I didn't feel very well. And I didn't I really didn't feel well. I didn't know what was going to happen to my body. And this poem gave me strength. And it's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. So I'll recite it for you. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near between the woods and a frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there's some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. What's that mean to me? I see an old man in this poem, or in my case, someone who didn't feel good. And he's on a journey of life, and he looks at the woods, and the woods represent death. He says, whose woods are these? I think I know. Well, you don't really know if your own death is coming. You don't know if those woods belong to you or not. So this is sort of the soul talking or the spirit talking, and he's saying his house is in the village, though, so your life is in the activity of human affairs. His house is in the village, though. And your conscious mind, he won't see you stopping here to watch the woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. So what this tells you is this is the spirit stopping to look at the woods filling up with snow, thinking about death. And the little horse, the ego, the small part of you, thinks it's queer to stop without life around. It's never known anything but the life you're in. So you're between the woods and frozen lakes, the darkest evening of the year. And I would think about that, and I thought, I'm between life and death. I was in my bed and didn't feel good, at all. Couldn't get, I was in bed for 6 months, and I'd read this and think I'm between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. And I think the frozen lake is kind of, you're getting towards the end of life and you're immobile a little bit. So you're kind of between not life as you haven't known it and the dark woods, or the frozen lake is that pathway to the woods. So the horse, little horse, he gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there's some mistake. Your ego's saying, hold on. What are we doing here? Why are we looking at these woods? Why are we looking at death? Why are we even thinking about this? Don't do that. Let's get going. This is stupid. But there's a pause, and he says, the only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. So he's saying right before you get to death, when you're looking at these woods, and this is true, if any of you have ever not felt good, you feel the allure of passing away, and it's not a giving up, it's the sensual sweetness of it, the deliciousness of just fading away, and that you're comforted somehow by something from beyond. And indeed, he says in the final verses, the woods are lovely, dark and deep. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. Death is lovely, dark and deep. You don't know what something dark and deep is. A mystery. It's alluring. It's something you want to look into and check out. And then he says, but but I have promises to keep. And I felt this when I was not feeling good. I felt this idea that I had a promise to keep, whether it was writing or something I had to do for other people or something in my life. There was something in me that said, this isn't your time. And he ends with, I have miles to go before I sleep. And I have miles to go before I sleep. So you have miles to go to get back to health, back to life, and have miles to go before it's time to go lay down in those dark woods, to be called back home. I know this isn't the only interpretation of it. I'm telling you, this is how I read it. And I just want to recite it one more time to wrap it up. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.